Hello, this is Javier Hernandez, and welcome back to Los Comics TV. We're doing another creator commentary episode. I'm going to do a little walkthrough here on El Muerto Casa del Diablo, the preview edition. As you might know by now, if you've listened to the couple of previous episodes, I'm in the middle of running a Kickstarter for the new El Muerto graphic novel, Casa del Diablo. What this is some of you already may know. You may have backed this back in 2020. I did a preview edition, meaning it's literally the first 26 pages of the new graphic novel Casa del Diablo. I had 28 pages done, 26 pages done at the time, and I lettered it. It was ready to go. So I thought I'd do a preview comic just for people who want to get ahead and read like the first chunk of the story. So this was a proof copy. So I did two versions of the book, the preview edition and the XL Deluxe preview edition. It's the same exact story, but what the deluxe-ish edition had, and I think we'll have time at the end to go through it. I published also the original thumbnails to the story. So we'll compare it to some of the the final pages, but this is how it worked. But we'll get to that after. Let's right now look at Casa del Diablo preview edition. So if you want to back to Kickstarter, please check out the link down below. And you can also check out the previous video, the Days of the Dead creator commentary, because that's the first graphic novel. And this takes place literally right after this one ends. So if you haven't read this book yet, and hopefully you'll want to get it, but if you want to get caught up on this story, you can check out this video right now, I guess, and then check this one out after. But it's not really, you don't really have to. I'm going to be explaining a lot of stuff here. So anyway, let's go through this Casa del Diablo preview edition. Story and art by Javier Hernandez. That would be me, folks, as I said at the beginning. Okay, so, what you need to know from the first book, Days of the Dead, is Diablo la Muerte. He gets abducted by the Aztec god of death and the Aztec god of destiny on his 21st birthday, which happens to be November 2nd. And he gets sacrificed. They rip his heart out, put it in a crystal jar, and send him back to Earth a year later. So all his friends on Earth, they think he died, right? He's been gone for a whole year and he's missing. So I wanted to start the story. Actually, I didn't start the story off with this sequence. I think I started it right here, and I'll explain that later. But after I did that, I go, no, you know what? Because this takes place literally at the end, after the end of the last book when he gets in his Volkswagen. But I thought, you know what? We need to check in on his best friend, Isaac Silver, Zach. So that's what this is. So remember, it's a year after Diego's disappeared. And Zach, who's a big filmmaking buff fanatic, what do you want to call it? Excuse me, taking a sip of water. He's sitting there drinking something. We'll find out what it is in a second. Doing a video, right? He's, he's got an iMac, kind of looks like the one I got right here in front of me. And he's recording some thoughts that he wants to put on the social media. Maybe Diego's out there. Maybe he didn't. They all think he might have passed away or something. But Zach is putting the message out there. Maybe Diego will see it somewhere. So one of the posters in Zach's room is The Man Swamp, which is one of my comics that I created several years ago. It's always easier to, you don't have to worry about any copyright issues and putting up your own work there in the background. So he's just remembering the night, a year and a day or two ago, where Diego came to borrow Zach's car because Diego was going to go to a Dia de los Muertos festival to celebrate his 21st birthday, and none of his friends could go. Like Zach was sick, and this other friend Susie, she had to work. So, again, it was about getting Diego to that party by himself. Story-wise, it's easier to just have something happen to him and he disappears instead of somebody seeing what happened to him. You know, of course, Zach goes and sees the car the next day, and it wrapped itself around a tree. And this is a nice little bit. I've seen this shirt before. I'm sure several artists have done it, but you know, the Hecho en Mexico logo, made in Mexico logo you see on products. Well, then someone took the logo and started putting it on shirts. So not unlikely Diego would have a cool shirt like that. This is always a nice thing, this like reverse silhouette. The character, well, you know, he's gone. Diego's gone. So all that's left is a silhouette, a memory. Yeah, you know, they packed up all his belongings. You know, Zach has most of the stuff, like a lot of the stuff there. The junk box. Pablo's Inferno was a comic book a friend of mine did years ago, Rody Montijo. Yeah, so not unlikely there'd be a... I wish there was a Pablo Inferno's doll, but it's not unlikely Diego would have that. And a Devilman action figure, borrowed from my collection. Yeah, so one of the things, here's Diego and his girlfriend Maria. Girlfriend at the time, they broke up about 3 years ago, previous to him disappearing. But one of the things I like to do is, yeah, they're big into cosplay. So Aladdin and Jasmine, and as the series progresses, they'll do more flashbacks, and we'll see more of, you know, little cosplay couples that they dressed up as. Maria's moved on with a new guy. You know, like I said, they broke up. She's moved on to a new guy, and, you know, Diego's disappeared. And, yeah, basically it's a best friend losing, you know, a friend losing his best friend. So he's very bummed out and, you know, spent a lot of time reminiscing on memories and such. And then if you read Days of the Dead or heard the previous commentary, you know about this. So when Zach and Diego were kids, I had this idea that they'd made this pact, this top secret pact, based on this movie that does not exist, because some of you might just start, you know, you already started typing that in a Google search. Like, hey, that is like a cool, classic, old Mexican horror film. That's what everybody thought when they first saw this in the first story. Los muertos también lloran. So yeah, it's just based on like an old 60s, maybe even 70s, just a black and white Mexican horror film. It's about a man it's a couple, and the man dies, and he basically comes back from the grave to take his wife with him because he loves her. Although, you know, at that point, you just leave her alone, right? So El Muerto's skull logo on his back of his jacket, you might have seen it. It's much more, I don't know if I have a picture of it somewhere here, but it's more stylized than this. But it's based on, I found this skull originally on an Aztec pyramid in a book years ago, back in the 90s when I was coming up with the character. And this is not exactly what it looked like, but this one's closer to the pyramid drawing than what Diego's design actually is. Because for El Muerto, I wanted to stylize it, even make it more simple. But I thought for the purpose of this film, the original suit that this guy wore has the more traditional, old-style Aztec skull logo. And there he is taking her away. The story behind this film, in my Muerto verse, is it's kind of like a mini genre. It's like a haunted film. It's like a film that was made, and there was like all kind of scandal behind the scenes between the director and the young star here, and might have been like a death or two on the set or an accident, and like the whole studio burned down, and you know the film was edited and ready to be released, maybe had a screening here and there, or one screening, and then there was some accident at that theater, and you know eventually what happens is like the film just kind of disappeared and no one's ever seen it. And then years later, it surfaces on the convention circuit in a black and white DVD. I guess it would have been a VHS tape back in 10, 20 years ago, but yeah, showed up a bootleg copy, maybe a really grainy copy on a DVD. Only a few copies were around and never really made it to the internet. And Zach as a kid, his uncle Gerber, named after Steve Gerber, comic book writer, Marvel Comics, DC. Howard the Duck is one of his probably most well-known inventions. Anyway, his uncle Gerber had a copy of the DVD, and so Zach one day stole it and let Diego borrow it and see it. So as kids, they were both aware of it. So that's the backstory of Los Muertos También Lloran. So there's a pact here where I don't think I have an image of the actual. It's in the first book, but Zach wrote it up like if one of them ever died, they have to agree to come back and tell the other guy what it was like. Kid stuff, right? So every day Zach's been opening the letter and reading it, this contract ever since Diego's passed. Yeah, so he's having a really horrible year that Diego's been gone. I'll let you translate that however you want. And this guy's basically he's heartbroken. His best friend's been missing. And what he's drinking, he's hitting the booze, unfortunately, badly. So he's been deteriorating the whole year while Diego's been gone. And I told you Zach's a film buff. That's like a certain 1970s classic gangster film. An alien of some type here. Anyway, so his room would be populated with all kinds of movie memorabilia. So then the story starts off now back to Mexico, where Diego's driving across from Mexicali, where he was at, where the first adventure took place at this circus. He's heading over to Tijuana, to the west coast. But there's this mountain range up in the state of Tecate, I believe, called La Rumorosa. And it's this mountain highway. I guess it used to be more treacherous back in the day, but obviously, repaving the road or whatever, more safety concerns, whatever. It's very, very well traveled, I understand. I've never been there, but I first saw this, though. I first became aware of this region, this highway pass, in the 1989 James Bond movie License to Kill. It was the second and last film to star Tim Dalton. Timothy Dalton was the Bond after Roger Moore, but before Pierce Brosnan. Anyway, that's an aside, right? But there's a big climax in the film where these tanker trucks are driving through this mountain pass, and I knew the film was made in Mexico at the time. But I thought it was an interesting place. It's like, wow, they're able to film in this mountain passageway with blocking off cars and everything. Years later, when the internet was starting up and running, I looked it up and I go, oh, the Rumorosa, it's a very well-known, well-traveled highway. So when I got to doing the stories, this story set up there, and I knew we had to get to Tijuana. I go, oh, well, he's going to drive through that mountain range because something's going to happen in there in the story. So that's the backstory of that. When I was drawing this scene, in my sketches or even on the final drawing, I like, for me, it's always going to have a reference. I always have to draw with music playing. I always have to have music, and it's always usually soundtrack music. I immediately thought of the opening shot of The Shining when Jack Nicholson and his family, they're driving. I don't know where it's at. Is it Denver, where the Overlook Hotel's at? But there's like this, they're driving this mountain passageway, and there's an aerial shot shooting straight down at them, and there's this ominous music. I'm sure you guys, most of you have seen that. If not, check out that movie after this video. So I put that music on because, again, when I'm drawing, I want to enhance what I'm thinking of. I want to get in the zone. So that's what that is. I wasn't trying to emulate that shot. It's just when I started drawing it, I thought of that shot. And it's not the exact shot. I think in the movie, it's the camera's like straight down. But a little tiny car crawling through a mountain passageway, I think of The Shining. So this is the Volkswagen that belonged to the criminal in the first book. You can read that book. So he made off with the vehicle. He needed some wheels. So it's a nice shot where it's driving through the that mountain passageway. So it's fun drawing all the craggy rocks, and I love drawing textures, different textures. So whether it's wood or water, or in this case, rock. So it's always fun to draw as an artist. So as Diego's driving, he looks down and he sees a car smashed over and this woman on top waving her jacket. So he slams the brakes on. You know, this scene actually, so, and I've asked my brother, my older brother Albert, about this numerous times over the years, and I even asked him again, you know, about 2 years ago when I was drawing this. When we were kids, our dad and mom took us, it was me and my older brother Albert, and I'm going to guess my sister, Olivia, although I never asked her about this, because she might have stayed with my aunt, I'm not sure. But we were driving down. My dad used to have a sister down in Mexicali, so I don't know. We might have even been, you know, on this Rumorosa highway or just somewhere else down in Baja. And me and my brother are sitting in the back. It was a station wagon, a Datsun, small size station wagon back then. This would be like early 70s, mid 70s. And so me and him are in the back of the station wagon. Back when you can do that, it was, you know, now it's illegal, I think, because you must be seated in a you know, car seat with the seatbelt in it. But back then it was just normal. And my parents were driving, and my dad and mom in the front, and maybe my sister in the middle, but me and my brother in the back. And as we're driving, we both looked down, and it was a similar thing. It was like, you know, a sloping mountain. And then there's a base down there. I thought it was on a beach, but maybe not. But there was a car turned upside down, literally, you know, it was on the roof of the car, so we can see the bottom part of the engine and everything. And there was a woman on the car, except she was kneeling on the car, like if you're kneeling on the floor. She was kneeling on the underside of the car, looking up. And then I remember like her two hands were raised. And I remember, maybe I'm projecting or making a lot of stuff different, but like she had white clothes or light colored clothes, and you could see like blood on her. And when I asked my brother, he remembers it like that too. So it's one thing for you to remember, make up a memory, but for two people to, there'd be no reason to. So we saw something, but you know, I don't know if we told our dad or we were just shocked, and then he just kept driving by. So I mean, you know. Unfortunately, no one saw. We didn't stop to help her, but not because it wasn't my parents' fault. But anyway, I'm sure when I was coming up with this scenario, there's no way that couldn't have popped in my head. But definitely after I drew it, it's like, oh my gosh, that reminds me of that. But you know, for the story, the narrative, I need Diego to be driving somewhere, and he comes across this woman. So he sees this woman. He slams the brakes on the car, and she jumped. Yeah, so the car was like that, like in real life. It was upside down, and she was kneeling on here, which would be a little odd because I know there's also these. It's not a flat surface, right? But anyway, she jumps off, and he's running down, and then she falls, and she's probably dead because when he touches her, as you know, if you might know Diego's power, he has the power to resurrect the dead. So. Yeah, she died. She was dying, and she died, and brought her back to life, and she's freaking out. She doesn't know why. She remembers her arm being broken, and she sees this strange guy. So she was packing a gun, pulls a gun on the guy. You know, she doesn't know who he is, and she doesn't know what happened to her. She doesn't know why she crashed or who did it or what. Checks his ID and, you know, incredulously, like everybody else, Diego de la Muerte. That's the guy's name. That's the guy's name. What's happening is her son has been kidnapped. Her infant son. She was visiting her grandmother in Tecate or Mexicali, and the baby was stolen at night from the bed. And through some people she talked to, they said that there's this legend of this woman, kind of like the Llorona myth. The Llorona story, if you know that. So she doesn't know to believe that or not, but they tell her that this person lives up in this mountain range. So, you know, as a mom, you know, she didn't have no help from the cops. A mother's going to do whatever the hell they can to save their child. So she had access to a weapon or two there at the grandparents' house. And she was on the road on her way, and she got somehow knocked off the road and such. We'll find out later about what happened exactly. So she's very, you know, suspicious. I don't blame her. and she's also very tense and very running out of time. So she doesn't have a lot of time to waste. So he says he'll help her. You know, his car still works. And no, it's not the same scorpion from the first graphic novel. There was a scene where you see a scorpion, but I thought I'd add another one in here. You know, they're nice avatars of, or foreshadowing, you know, something bad's going to happen. They get in the car, she introduces herself, Dolores Tremosa. That particular name, it's not, yeah, some, you know, in the first book I told you some names that are some people, from people I know. I just like the name Dolores and Tremosa. I was just trying to find a Spanish surname that was not common. So I just looked through a whole list and I came across Tremosa. Like, I never heard that one before. Let me use that. I didn't want people to think, oh, is she based on this or that or that? Although, I'll be honest, the actual character, it took me a long time to name her. I didn't name her till probably I got to lettering this sequence, because I was trying to find just the right name, you know. But I based some of her on the lead singer of the Cranberries, Dolores Reardon, if I remember the last name correctly. I've always loved the Cranberries, and, you know, unfortunately Dolores, she passed away. Might have been some type of accident or something. And, you know, I don't want to start speculating. I'm sure it's been written about. She passed away, I think, in her bathtub. Maybe she drank too much or something. But anyway, she, you know, I read more about her afterwards and such, and I loved her music and a lot of her songs and some of the reasons of the songs. So I don't know. I just like that look, you know, the short hair and such. So, so anyway, let's see. So, yeah, she's relating to Diego. Well, you know, hey, I was at my grandmother's house. She was, you know, getting to meet her grandson, or I guess great-grandson. And, you know, in the evening, Dolores is asleep here with the baby. I forgot what you call these. There's this brand of Mexican blankets. Boy, I had the name the other day, and now it's escaped me. Some of you are going to know it, though, or you've seen it. And they have all, you know, they're big, thick blankets, and they have all kinds of designs on them. Tigers and horses and lions and such. In fact, I think I have one like that. So anyway, I thought I'd give, you know, just to give it a little, that Mexican flavor. That's, you know, that's where she's at. So you want to sell the environment where the characters are. Anyway, she wakes up in 4 in the morning. The baby's gone. Pretty horrible nightmare for a parent. She goes across the street, and there's just some, you know, some old timers just hanging out there till 3 in the morning, talking, drinking, playing chess, whatever. No one's seen anything. And then another man comes up, an older man, Don Alberto. He's named after my dad, actually. Now that I think about it, yeah. Doesn't look exactly like him, but just using my dad as a reference at the time, just two years ago. So he comes up and he says, you know, there's this story of La Doña Maclovia La Dolente, and that's what this is. It's my version of the Llorona. The Llorona story, if you don't know, it was a movie, right? Was it Blumhouse put out one 2-3 years ago? And then, you know, it's been a Mexican legend for decades, and there's been some classic Mexican films on Llorona. But it's about the basic story. There's always variations. The woman, she drowns her own children in the river, and then, of course, she laments that later, and then she starts, you know, wandering the world looking for her children, asking for her children, mis niños, even in her death and as a ghost. So, as a legend, I heard that as a kid in a neighborhood, not probably from my parents, but just other Mexican kids in the neighborhood. So yeah, it's I hope, you know, modern kids have their own myths and legends. I'm sure they do, yeah, myths and legends. Now they make memes out of it, but so I thought I'd use the Llorona basically in my new book, but I wanted to create my own version of it. So this is La Doña Maclovia La Dolente, with the same basic story. You know, this is all taking place in Mexicali. I just got on Google Maps, whatever, and punched in Mexicali, and then I just would zoom in, you can zoom in and get the actual photographic street reference, and I would just start, going down the streets. So I would just look for buildings and such. And this was a building I found, and I think I found another one. Yeah, it might have been like an auto shop. Anyway, with these, big steel gated doors. Anyway, I just combined them together. Again, just to try to capture a little bit of what a street in Mexicali looks like. When people see this, they're just going to look at it for a second, read it, and go and expound it. But you as an artist, you want like a solid reference. And not that you can do a photographic representation, but it all helps. Like I said, playing music helps me. So the story with Don Alberto, same thing, him and his young wife, they were out, at their house, and one night he heard his truck taking off, and he realized that his baby was missing, and the person stole the baby. He never found the baby. His wife died shortly after out of heartbreak, like a week later. So this poor man's been carrying this loss for decades. He's much younger back then. No one believes it, right? Yeah, right. Wasn't a ghost or something. So anyway, so Diego and Dolores are driving through the mountain passageway, looking for, she's not sure what, but she knows to look there. That's what this Don Alberto told her, that Doña Maclovia resides up there somewhere. So she sees, they're driving on the mountain way, and she sees this side road, and she sees the tire tracks up that road. So she tells them to turn around, and then they start going up this mountain road, up the mountain, and they see the truck. It's the truck that Alberto described, an old Chevy pickup. I think it's like a 57. I have a reference for it. I have a folder. I learned how to draw that truck. So, again, she's putting the pieces together. Okay, that's the truck that was mentioned in these other kidnappings. So, but the weird thing is, at the top of this mountain, there in La Rumorosa, there's a Spanish hacienda where there shouldn't be, right? No known records of the Spanish being anywhere near in that area, or at least up on the mountaintop building a hacienda. So, for reference time, I just looked at up a lot of Sergio Leone westerns, the Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and A Few Dollars More and such, because I've always loved the production work that they did on those films. They had these really, really cool, atmospheric, authentic looking, Mexican haciendas and such. So that's what I looked. So I looked at different ones, and I just kind of built my own big, real large one. And of course I had to find a tower, because that plays into the story. And again, it's just fun to drawing this decrepit, cracked up, ominous thing with all the blackened interiors. So they drive up to it, and then we cut from there. So then, and it's a preview comic, so we're just about done. So hope you weren't getting too prepped to hear the whole story, because that's coming up in the Kickstarter. We're cutting to another scene here. The morning sky splits open above Volcan. I'm going to butcher the name. Popocatépetl. Yeah. My Nahua is terrible. The Nahua is the language of the ancient Mexican, the Aztecs. This is a famous volcano. You may have seen these like paintings of Aztec, like warriors, or this couple, where there's this man. He's sitting on a rock, and he's holding a woman in his arms. She's laying in his arm like asleep. They're tied to the legend of this volcano. So anyway, I needed a spot somewhere in Mexico. Didn't have to be a volcano, but I thought it'd be nice to tie in this little sequence to, that legendary place. The sky cracks open. Lightning bolts are flashing. Yeah, the sky rips open, so you see this cosmic skyscape, and then you see the silhouette, and you see this thing. This sequence actually, so now that I remember, those of you who've seen the old Godzilla films from the 60s, particularly, maybe 70s, late 60s, early 70s. Remember that giant golden three-headed dragon, Monster Zero, they called it in the U.S., but it was King Ghidorah. Well, as a kid, I remember they showed the sky, and then there'd be lightning cracking, like, almost like Kirby crackle in a way, but, the way they'd film it back then, lightning and such. And then you'd see the silhouette, I guess, of the dragon appearing, and then it'd be flashing, and then it'd materialize. So I thought that was a really neat entrance, right? This thing comes out of nowhere, and with lightning storm and such, and it's this big cosmic demon. So I thought I would use that for mine. So it's the same effect, actually. No problem admitting it. I mean, that's reference, and those are great movies. So first you see it as a, reversed out white silhouette, and then you see it. So it's not an octopus, but definitely has that look. A giant tentacled monster, which, goes in with all your Lovecraftian elder gods, Cthulhu and all those. So this is a star demon from the Aztec pantheon mythology. I think it's, again, I'm going to butcher the name, Tsitsimen. Boy, that's totally wrong. I know. I should have wrote this stuff down. But it's a star demon. And the depictions in the codices are very different. Sometimes it looks like a skeletal woman with this skirt and there's a snake coming out of her and such. But, for me, it's like, when I think of just the word star demon, I think of a star. So this multi-pointed thing. So I thought of and then a demon. So I thought this tentacled, octopus-looking thing would be my stand-in for that. And then, it comes out of the hole, and the hole closes up. And then it's just kind of there floating, and then it shoots across. To be continued. I warned you, it's only a preview. So, and here's an ad for Los Comics TV. The reference, only for me, it doesn't, all that matters is what the final page looks like for the reader. But for me, to help me get into it, when I drew this, I looked at it as if this was a stop motion creature effect. It's kind of spongy, and then, again, it's just my reference point when I'm drawing it. When you guys see it, you just see it what it is. It's some type of monster. But it helps me as I'm drawing it and working on it and such to think of, an octopus stop motion monster creature. And that's basically it. Just want to give you some behind the scenes stuff. This is the preview comic. If this has piqued your interest, definitely check out the Kickstarter link down below, because you can order the full book. Comes out, I'll have it out early next year. It's due to be shipped out by April, but hopefully it should get out sooner. But yeah, so you'll get the first 26 pages and then the remaining 100 or so pages for Casa del Diablo. Really quick, because I did mention maybe I'll be able to show you guys a little bit of extra stuff here. Let's see here. So this is the deluxe edition, which comes with the behind the scenes, what is this called? How to make comics the Los Comics way. So this Casa del Diablo was book 2 in the graphic novel series. These are the thumbnails. Literally, I just get a piece of copy paper. I used to call it typing paper, 8.5 by 11, and I just draw the whole book out. I start drawing the story out like this. This is page 1, so we can compare it to, well, actually, since we have enough room on the screen, make sure these are lined up here in the camera for you. This is what I drew, and I draw the whole book. I would do the whole 120 pages or so, and I'd edit it, throw pages out, redraw them, whatever. And then once I was satisfied with my story, I would start redrawing it on the larger 11 by 17 paper. But just to compare, and I don't write a story outline. I mean, I don't have a script. I don't sit there and write a whole script, and page 1, panel 1, Zach is at computer. I just have thought about this story in my head for months and months and months, and then it's time to put it down on paper. So I just try to bang it out, bam, 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 So, but you can see that, it doesn't change much. The angle's a little different here. This is like we're more behind him, and this is like the camera's more like up, kind of like where you're at, looking down on him. That didn't change much, and I wanted a shot from behind. We're looking at him from behind, and he's at his computer. And then I wanted a side shot of him, so that hasn't changed much. I'm not going to go through every page by page, but since we got these two here, let's see here. I think it's about lined up there. Not much has changed here, right? The flashback, Diego, Zach opens the door, there's Diego, and then the cop, and then, Zach looking really worried, but I wanted to, when I drew it like that, I wanted to see his face, but then I wanted to show more of his body, putting his hand up on his head and have the panel actually breaking. So I'm going to put that aside only because I don't want to, otherwise I'll literally go through every page, which maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing. I'm now trying to keep this a little shorter. The previous one, which ran, I think, an hour, that was a full graphic novel. But yeah, you remember these scenes, right, with the cosplay and that panel changed. But yeah, and then sometimes I'll write dialogue. I'll scribble down what's going on, like the narration or word balloons, whatever. I just, sometimes I don't. Like on here, I didn't. Here, I didn't either, because I have an idea what he's saying, but it's not important at this stage, because this is months before I start drawing the final one. It's not important. I have to know exactly the dialogue that's going to be, written there. But at the same time, other times, for whatever reason, I do start writing this stuff down, which actually helps me a lot when I get back to this stuff. Because there's been once or twice where I look back and I go, what exactly did I, but I know what's going on, right? But sometimes I had a catchphrase I should have wrote down. There was like a certain phrase or a sentence or two that would have worked, So that's why I do that. I try to write this stuff down if I remember. And then, this stuff can change. Whatever I wrote here doesn't mean it's the final thing. It's my rough draft. Like, ideally, it's not meant to be seen by anybody, right? It's just for me. But of course, it's always nice to put this stuff out because people do I know I like it. Why do you think we like DVD extras so much? We want to hear and see what went into making this story. So that's what that is. Yeah, that's pretty much the same shot I remember. So is this one too. And then sometimes they get really loose, like this right here, right? The opening shot when he's driving. Like, okay, all I gotta do is remind myself it's a road on a mountain and a little car. Who cares what the car looks like? It's a very bad Volkswagen there. This shot did change. I noticed Zach is right here, is lying on his back on the bed, and in the story he's face down. Yeah, he's serving his drink, but I mean, it makes a big difference, right? Because he's lying down on his back and he's thinking, and he's kind of in control. And he's kind of doing something, sitting there holding the cup, drinking. Here, he's drinking, and then he's like he just flops down on the bed. So it is pretty different, even though it's a guy on a bed. And because there's no narration, no word, I don't want to have thought balloons. Oh, I don't feel good. I just wanted to show it. So I think that just shows more exhaustion, maybe defeat. You just flop down your face. You're out. Again, storytelling decisions you make. Yeah, these are really loose and quick. Originally, like I said, I didn't do the Zach sequence in the beginning. I added that after. It was just going to start with him driving. So the title was going to be Los Comics Presents Juan Diego de la Muerte, El Muerto en Casa del Diablo. In fact, I may have not had, I wrote title. May have not had the title at the time when I did this. But then afterwards, I realized, well, no, it's going to start with Zach. And then it's going to have a title page. It has like the first book, it's going to have a, let me show you really quick. It's going to have a chapter, not a chapter heading, but it's like I divide this books into parts, part 1, part 2, part 3. This first book has 2 parts. So it's going to have part 1 and then the title of that. Well, I keep calling it a chapter, but it has a title for that part. And the title of the book is at the beginning of the story. So anyway, that's why I decided, oh no, I'm not going to do that because it's going to be called whatever it's called, and it's going to have a, that's real, I know. I just made a whole mess of that convoluted explanation. But if you remember, remember the girl was waving her jacket. He looks over and sees and stopped and slides down and she collapses. And he comes up to her and he touches her, resurrecting her. She pulls the gun. So yeah, I mean, for the most part, I don't know, maybe 85-90% of my initial rough drafts is what remains in the book. Maybe 80, because I do a lot of editing actually. Like, you know, for example, I may, whatever this 4-page sequence is, I may have decided to add another page later, like expand it or something. So, but my first draft is important to get it out, to kind of just bang it out quick. For me, like get that flow of the story out, and then you edit it. You can throw out a whole page. You can redraw 2 pages, throw these 2 pages out. You can add 2 pages in between these two pages. Whatever makes this, you know, whatever makes the story better. This didn't change much. I remember they're getting in the car. The car's driving. There's another car on the other side. And then she's talking about her grandmother. And then she's in bed with the baby. She wakes up and the window's like, hey, the window's fluttering open. And then, yeah, the basic shot of the Doña Maclovia La Dolente didn't change much. And, yeah, driving up to the hacienda. Yeah, this changed quite a bit. But again, I just drew this without looking at reference, you know, just out of memory from what I remember these look like. So, and this didn't change much either. The volcano, lightning cracking open the sky, and the thing comes out, and it takes a flight. So that's it. These are some deleted scenes. It's really maybe hard to make out. There's a guy fishing. See, there's a little man in the little fishing boat. His line is in the water. This is underwater. Oh, yeah, I know what it was. Yeah, so you see the little line with the worm on the end, whatever, down underwater. There's an underwater little mound of something, and then there's bubbles coming out, and it breaks open. Lightning comes shooting out of that little thing. And here's the man in the boat. His arms are thrown up, and there's lightning shooting up from the water. And all of a sudden, the star demon, she pops out of the water. She was underground. She was undersea. And she pops out. She makes a big flying arc. And then he looks at his beer bottle like, what the? But I changed that. I did. I mean, I thought it was a funny scene. I liked it a lot. But I wanted her to come out from the sky, you know. Because she's not an octopus. So like, yeah, why would she be underwater? So yeah, there's an example where I drew this and I tossed it out and I redrew it. So you can't be precious. You gotta, whatever works better, whatever you feel is the better way to tell the story. That's some early production art, really early, 2017. I had already had the idea of the star demon, and what she would look like. So, and there's an early shot of the Mayorona character. These are all the people who backed this Kickstarter back in 2020, actually. Your name may be in here. So that's basically it. You know, I'll put these 2 up here. So, Kickstarter down below for CASA del Diablo, the actual complete graphic novel. There's different reward levels in the Kickstarter. There's one where you could order, also in case you never read the first one, you can order both of the books, Days of the Dead and CASA del Diablo. And you could also order, if you want, there's another level where I got 3 books, the 2 graphic novels and this one, El Muerto Origins, which reprints the original version of El Muerto's comics from 1998 to 2008. But you can read up, you can see, look at that on the Kickstarter. In fact, I'm going to do a third creator commentary video on this, where I'll go through and talk about, yeah, like the very first 1998 El Muerto comic that I did, and then the follow-up one from El Muerto Mishmash, and then the third one from Dead and Confused Part 1. But we'll talk about that later. So anyway, check out the Kickstarter, please, the link if you're interested, and subscribe to this channel if this is your first time checking out this video and you want to follow along and see what other stuff I've done. Subscribe to it, hit the like button while you're down there if you could. I appreciate it. And check out my other videos. I have other Muerto videos. I got a lot of videos on, I review a lot of manga. I'm a big Go Nagai fan, Devilman, Mazinger Z, so I review a lot of his stuff and Steve Ditko stuff. And so just look through there. There's a lot of good comic book content. It's not any modern comics. For the most part, I don't really cover those here. But there's different strokes for different folks. So thanks everybody, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks.